Good morning, everyone. Welcome to All Blended Up. I'm so excited to be finally actually recording this podcast. This has been a long time coming. This has been a long time in the making. And I'm just excited to actually finally be recording for you guys. I'm so excited for this opportunity. And so let me just get started, let you know a little bit about myself. My name is Shantanell Lindon, and this is a podcast dedicated to those who are in family situations like mine, a blended family. And I was led to start this podcast a year ago. I know y'all, a whole year ago. Back in June of 2022, I was actually sleeping and I heard podcast. And I know for some of y'all this probably sound crazy in the world that we live in now, where it seems like everybody and their mama have a podcast. But that was not something that was on my radar at all. I didn't know anything about a podcast. I spend pretty much a lot of my time on YouTube. And the people I watch is probably pranksters, or I may watch, Christian content. Like I just wasn't in that sector at all. And so when I got the idea of a podcast and started doing my research, I was like, oh my goodness, there's a lot of people that have a podcast. And then when I started looking into the equipment that I was going to need and all of that, I started finding all these videos on YouTube about how to start a podcast. And so I was like, okay, this is a thing. And so, but when I heard a podcast, I was like, okay, what are you going to talk about? What are you going to do a podcast concerning? And it was like the idea came, boom, blended families. And so I was like, okay, well, what am I going to talk about concerning blended families? And it was like, talk about it all, like the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful. And so this is why we are here today. I'm here today to just let you in a little bit on my family dynamic, on the things that have worked for my husband and I, the things that have not worked for my husband and I. And hopefully my podcast can be a resource to families such as mine who are needing some type of guidance and support, or just needing somebody that may understand from that sphere. And so a little bit about my background and how I came to be in this family dynamic. So in 2007, I met my husband. And at the time, I did not know that was my husband. But we did meet in March of 2007, and I was 18 years old. Yes, 18 years old. That is very young to be meeting your husband, and very young to not even understand what journey you're about to walk down. It's because I really wanted to be a resource for young women and even young men who may find themselves in a situation as mine. And so let me backtrack. Back in March of 2007, I met my husband at a club. And at the time, of course, I didn't know that was my husband. I didn't even know that was going to be like somebody that I was going to have as a boyfriend or develop a relationship with at all. That wasn't what I was on when I was going out. Was not what I was on at all. But we did meet, we hit it off, and over the months we continued to talk. Like, if anybody's from Houston, they understand Houston is huge. So I lived on the other side of town. I lived on the north side of Houston. He lived on the southwest side of Houston. So he would periodically come and visit me, come see me, and that's kind of how our relationship developed. And I don't think he, at the time, knew I was his wife or where this was going or anything. We were just hanging out. We liked each other. We were hanging out. We were spending a lot of time together. But, of course, as the relationship developed, feelings began to develop as well. And so this is going on for a few months, and I don't know a whole lot about him, other than what he's telling me. There's a 5-year difference. We were hanging out, we're having a good time. And as the months go by, you know, he got the courage to let me know, because initially I did not know he had children. So he got the nerve to tell me, or rather his cousin told me, like, he has 2 sons. And baby, that was it for me. The relationship was cut off, because I was like, 2 kids? I didn't have no kids. So that was it for me. So we talked for like 6 months. His cousin told me we had kids. He felt bad for not telling me about it. So we were done. That was it. We were cut off. I went on my way. He went on his way, and that was the end of that. And so rolling into 2008, he started calling me again. And so we started back talking and all of these different type of things. And that's when he could be a little bit more liberal, since he had got that off his chest that he did indeed have children. He starts talking about the kids. And I'm just like, oh my God, like it was just so much going on in my mind, because I was not anticipating this. I did not understand this. Like, that was like the furthest thing from my mind, being a stepmother. And so let me interject here. Like, nobody plans to be a stepfather or a stepmother. When people are formulating their life, or even thinking about their life as a child, you're not thinking about being a step parent. You're thinking about you meeting your spouse, y'all getting married, y'all having children. And if you come from a Christian background like me, you're thinking like, oh, we're going to wait until we get married, then we're going to get married, and we're going to have a couple of kids, and it's going to be happily ever after, like a Disney movie. But how many of you understand that that's not how life is? Life sometimes will throw some curveballs at you, and if you're not ready for them, you may get knocked out. And so at this present moment, when I'm looking back, this, I feel like, was life throwing a curveball at me that I was not ready for. I was not ready, and I can admit that now. For years, I don't think I was comfortable to admit that I was not ready for such a task. Now, being in this thing with, when was 07? Like 16 years later, I understand that I had undertook a task that I was not ready for. But the thing about it was, my husband at the time, he was asking me, he was like, he was pursuing me and we were dating, and, it had came out that he had the kids and all of that stuff. And he was like, are you ready for this? And I'm, at 18, you think you can conquer the world. Like, yeah, like I can do this. And honestly, looking back, I had no idea. I had no idea what I was doing. None of my friends were in a relationship like this. Again, they were all 18. Even the friends that I did have that were older than me, because I worked at a fast food restaurant at the time. And so I did have some girlfriends that were a few years older than I was, but they were in relationships with their boyfriends, and they were with their children's fathers and stuff like that. Nobody was in a relationship like mine. And so it's not like I had a resource. It's not like I had a resource to go to. And so I really didn't understand the dynamics of the relationship that I was in, but we were just going. And then my husband, I give him credit, he did not allow me to meet his children right away. He did not. It was a while before I met his sons. And I'll never forget when I met his oldest son, Trey. And he was 6 years old. And I just remember thinking, and he was so sweet, child. Oh my God. When I first met him, he came up and gave me the biggest hug. This baby did not know me. And he came up and he gave me the biggest hug, and it just melted my heart. But it also was fear. I was like, oh my God, this is a big kid. Like, because if you think about a 6-year-old, when they hug you, they're like right at your stomach. They're right at your stomach. So he gave me a hug, and I was just like, this is really real. Like, this boy has children. And so I was just going through the motions of that thing, and I did not know, like, where this was going, where this relationship was going. He has kids, I don't. You know, when '08 rolled around, I had enrolled in school because I graduated in May of 2007, but I didn't go into college right away. I took a semester off, and I started college in the summer, not the summer, but the spring of 2008. So by this time, I'm in college. You know, my life is essentially just starting, and I get in this relationship with this man that has kids, you know. And so it was just a lot to process at the time. And when I think back, I'm just like, I was really making some life changing decisions at such a young age, and I did not have anybody to guide me, anybody to really direct me, anybody to pour into me. And because I didn't want to face criticism, I did not tell, you know, like my family right away, like my mom and dad and, you know, my family. I didn't tell them right away because I didn't want them to be like, girl, you don't need to be in a relationship with this man. He got kids and stuff like that. I didn't want to face the criticism. And so I had to deal with that as well. So I was really dealing with this alone. I was dealing with a lot of things alone. I was dealing with my own issues that I grew up in, you know, my family dynamics from how I grew up. And later on in the podcast, I'll kind of get into my background. But because of the background that I came from, I can say it helped me in a sense tread these waters, but also it probably hindered me as I look back as well in my in pursuing this relationship and in the development of this relationship. And so I just want this podcast, and I feel like I rambled on there, but I want this podcast to be a resource for people that are young girls, young men that may find themselves in a situation such as mine. You find somebody that you like, and, you know, they have children, and now you are at a crossroads and you have to make a decision. You have to decide if you're going to continue to stay in this relationship and pursue this relationship, or if you are going to walk away. And ultimately, it's up to you to make that decision. Nobody can make that decision for you. And there is not a right or wrong decision. Like, if I don't get upset with people that be like, oh, I don't want to date nobody with children. Heck, I said I wouldn't date a man with kids. And so you got to be careful about them inner vows too. Because I was like, oh, baby, I remember being in high school. I was like, that's too much drama. I'll never date a man with kids. And, boy, did that bite me in the butt. I not only dated a man with kids, but I married him. So, be careful about never in those inner vows, because those be the very things that may come back, you know, in your life. And saying all this, y'all might be thinking, oh my goodness, this is crazy. That was a lie, or oh, do she regret it, or anything like that. I just want to say off the cuff, I do not regret it. Was it easy? No. It was not easy. But marriage and children, it's not easy. You know, even if you are just a young person getting married and starting a family, that can be difficult, because you go from it just being about you, your little where all you have to be responsible is you. That's it. That's the only responsibility you have as a single person, is you. And so when you enter into a relationship as a husband or a wife, now you have to consider that person. And you have to be selfless. If you do it the biblical way, you are supposed to serve each other and, out serve each other. That way nobody lacks what they need because everybody is pouring into each other. The husband is pouring into his wife, loving her as Christ loved the church. The woman is honoring and being submissive to her husband. When you do it that way, you're constantly giving of yourself, And that's not always easy at the front, because you may feel like it's an area that person is lacking in, or you may feel as though there's a need that isn't being met, and so it can be some uncharted waters at the beginning. And so when you throw a dynamic like mine in, when you marry somebody that already has children, where when you have your first child, that's not their first child. So that's already a first that's not, y'all are not going to be experiencing together. And it's not saying that it can't be just as beautiful. But I know for me, in the back of my mind, I was like, especially since my first child, my husband already had 2 sons, if I haven't already said. He had 2 sons. Then when I had my first baby, it was a boy. So I was like, oh, he's not going to be as excited, because he already has 2 boys. But he was excited. And that's a whole nother story for another day. But I'm just presenting some of these things because it's important for young ladies to know. And I'm saying ladies because I'm a woman, so I'm just speaking from my experience. But it could be for men too. Like, it can be some uncharted waters if you are not ready, if you are not prepared, and if you don't have wise counsel. Some of us don't have the maturity to be in a relationship such as this. Marriage is already, people getting divorced in your traditional marriage. And when I say traditional, I mean, a man, woman, getting married, having kids. And if you look at statistics, I don't have them in front of me right now, divorce is at a high. So when you add a situation like mine, yeah, neither one of us had never been married, but he also already have children. And so there's different components. There's other things that have to be considered when that component is being added. And so, oh man, I'm excited about this podcast. I have so much to talk about. I just want to talk about so many things in the episodes to come. I'm going to get into, some of these nuances when it comes to being in a blended family and how you can navigate those waters and how it won't always be perfect and how you won't always get it right. We're still navigating through. My oldest son is 22. The second one under him, he's 17 years old. And the 17-year-old just had a talk about some of his experiences in this family. And so it's so much to consider. It's so much to consider. And that's why I want this podcast to be a resource for those who are entering into a blended relationship. Because it starts as a relationship before it starts as a marriage. Not only are you getting to know this man or this woman, but now you got to get to know this baby, this child. And they have feelings and they have emotions and they have things that they're dealing with. Oh man, it's going to be so many things that I want to talk about, and I just cannot wait to launch it all. Y'all stick with me or join the journey with me. My husband, he will be alongside of me with some episodes. I wanted this first episode for him to be on it, but his schedule as of late has been wild at work, and so he's gonna get in because I want to give it on the other side. I can only speak from my experience as the stepmother, coming in as the party that did not have any children and getting in a relationship with him who already have children. So of course I want to give his perspective, how he felt, what was going on in his mind, how scary that might have been for him, introducing a new woman to his children, all of those different things. We want to talk about it all. We want to lay it all on the line. That way, those who find themselves at that crossroads that we found ourselves, they can make an informed decision. No, I'm not a counselor or anything like that. I'm just have real world, real life experience to give you, and I'm speaking from that lane. I know there's a lot of voices out there, a lot of people that you could be listening to, but I just want to give a perspective from my relationship. I've been doing it for 16 years. My husband and I have been married for 10 years, and we're still going strong. And so that's where I'm going. And so I just thank y'all for tuning in for this first episode. Get ready, buckle your seatbelt, because it's gonna get real.